You know, power doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it just shows up. And the room changes. The sea works the same way. You can't always see what's beneath it, but you better believe it's there. And when we talk about India's carrier group, we're not just talking about a few ships floating in formation. We're talking about presence, dominance, command. That's what the INS Vikrant and INS Vikramaditya bring to the Indian Ocean. That's what makes them dangerous. See, when a nation deploys not one, but two aircraft carriers, that's not strategy. That's a statement. That's a show of strength, of resolve, of reach. And you better understand what that reach really means. These carriers aren't sitting at port, shining for parades. They're built for operations, long, strategic deployments far from home, with the ability to project air power anywhere across the Indian Ocean and beyond. Because the battlefield doesn't wait, and when the call comes, India's carrier group answers from anywhere. INS Vikrant, the country's first indigenous aircraft carrier, isn't just a ship. It's a symbol of self-reliance, of breaking the chain and building something powerful from the ground up. Every bolt, every deck plate, every radar system on that carrier represents years of engineering, sacrifice, and vision. And Vikrant carries more than fighter jets. It carries a message. India isn't playing catch-up anymore. It's setting the pace. Then there's INS Vikramaditya, Russian, built Indian, owned and fully operational with a suite of my G-29K fighter jets. This isn't your average war machine. It's a floating airbase, with eyes in the sky and missiles on standby. It gives India a second launch pad, a second shield, and double the danger for anyone thinking of testing maritime limits. These two ships together, they don't ask for dominance. They assume it. But let me be clear. Carriers aren't just floating islands. Their power is not just in what they carry, but in what they inspire. When these ships move, destroyers move with them. Frigates follow. Submarines dive into position. It's a coordinated ballet of firepower and defense, an ecosystem of war machines that turns a carrier from a ship into a stronghold. A moving fortress, an unspoken promise that if you cross certain lines, you'll get an answer you weren't prepared for. And don't forget, these carriers don't need to fire a shot to be effective. Their very presence creates pressure. Strategic deterrence, that's the name of the game. You think twice before making a move when you know there's a floating squadron watching. You blink a little slower when you hear that radar ping and realize that someone's already got your coordinates. That's power, and that's why the Indian Navy's carrier group is more than hardware. It's a force of will, a presence that says, we're here, and we're not going anywhere. Now some may ask, what makes them so dangerous? Is it the jets, the missiles, the sheer size? No, it's the message. It's the intention behind the steel. It's the unshakable discipline, the strategic vision, and the ability to respond, fast, hard, and without hesitation. The carrier group doesn't shout to be heard. It simply arrives, and when it does, the balance shifts. Because in the end, true power doesn't need permission. It simply moves. You know, a weapon is only as good as the hands that wield it, and even more so as the eyes that guide it. When we talk about India's carrier group, it's not just about muscle, it's about vision, the kind of vision that sees beyond the horizon, because in modern warfare, the first battle isn't fought with missiles or jets. It's fought with information, with surveillance, with intelligence. And let me tell you something. India's carrier group doesn't just float on the sea. It watches it, listens to it, reads it like a book. The ships in this group are equipped with some of the most advanced radar and electronic warfare systems in the region. They can detect enemy aircraft, submarines, and even ballistic missiles long before they're a threat. They're networked, synchronized, constantly feeding information back and forth in real time. It's like a brain operating a massive body. one heartbeat, one response. That's the difference between reacting and anticipating. And anticipation, that's survival. Now you throw in satellites and UAVs, drones flying high, scanning the ocean surface, mapping enemy movements, feeding that intel straight to command. With these eyes in the sky, the carrier group becomes more than a fleet. It becomes a conscious entity. It sees in the dark, it hears through silence, and when necessary, it strikes with precision. Because when you know what's coming, you don't flinch, you focus, you prepare. And then you own the encounter, but don't get it twisted. All that vision, all that data, it needs more than processing. It needs protection, and that's where the pack comes in. You see, a carrier alone is a hive. You target. But a carrier with its full group, destroyers, frigates, submarines, supply ships, that's not a target anymore. That's a problem, a deadly problem. Take INS Kolkata class destroyers, for example. These aren't just escort ships. They're elite guardians armed with long-range surface-to-air missiles, anti-submarine torpedoes, and BrahMos cruise missiles. They've got their own radars, sonar, and layered defenses. You try to touch that carrier, and these ships are already a step ahead, locking on, ready to respond. They form a shield, a moving perimeter of fire and steel that turns the entire group into a fortress at sea. And beneath all that, hiding in the depths, are the submarines. You don't see them, and that's exactly the point. Nuclear, powered, silent, and always watching. They're the hidden teeth in the formation. They don't threaten. They wait. They stalk. And if needed, they eliminate. That's a level of lethality that doesn't brag. It doesn't broadcast. It just exists, quietly changing the odds in India's favor. You look at this fleet together. Intelligence in the skies, radar sweeping the seas, submarines prowling the depths, destroyers standing tall, and you begin to understand what makes this group so dangerous. It's not just the firepower, it's not just the ships, it's the unity, it's the coordination, it's the purpose. Every ship, every system, every sailor plays a role in a tightly woven machine of maritime dominance. So when that carrier group sails, it's not just a military exercise, it's a statement, a message written in steel and discipline, sent across waves and borders. We see you, we're ready, we move as one. And in today's world, that kind of silent strength, that's the most dangerous force of all. Danger isn't always loud. It doesn't always roar or flash in front of you. Sometimes it comes in a blink, in the form of a missile you never saw, launched from a ship you didn't detect, guided by a system you didn't know was tracking you. That's the kind of danger India's carrier group represents when it comes to its firepower. It's not just about having weapons. It's about how they're used with purpose, with precision, and above all, with the discipline of a force that understands when to hold back and when to strike hard. The Indian Navy's carrier group isn't just floating steel and squadrons. It's a strike platform in motion. And one of the sharpest edges of that platform is the BrahMos missile system. Now the BrahMos isn't just a missile, it's a statement. A supersonic cruise missile capable of hitting sea or land targets with blistering speed and surgical accuracy. It flies nearly 3 times the speed of sound, hugging terrain, dodging defenses, and delivering a warhead before most systems can even respond. This isn't theoretical. This is field, tested, ready, and already deployed across India's frontline naval ships. When these carriers sail, they bring with them destroyers and frigates equipped with vertical launch systems, VLS cells that hold BrahMos ready to fly. And if a threat arises, whether from land, sea, or air, response time isn't measured in hours or even minutes. It's seconds, target acquired, command given, missile away. There's no need for escalation when deterrence speaks this loud. But that's not all. The group is evolving. India isn't stopping with what it has, it's preparing for what's coming. Hypersonic variants of the BrahMos are in development, pushing the limits of speed, maneuverability, and destructiveness. Add to that the development of longer-range versions, and suddenly that carrier group isn't just a regional force. It's a power that can reach across oceans, deep into adversary territory, and strike with the kind of accuracy that makes diplomacy urgent and war a losing option. Still, firepower is only as effective as the platform that carries it. That's where the carrier-based fighters come in. The MiG-29KS, operating from the decks of Vikramaditya and Vikrant, are not just multi-role aircraft, they're mobile force multipliers. Armed with precision, guided munitions, air-to-air missiles, and anti-ship capabilities, they extend the reach of the carrier by hundreds of miles in any direction. In a live conflict, these jets would take off, conduct missions over land or sea, and return, all without the need for a fixed base. That's power, that's independence. That's what makes the carrier group not just a defense asset, but a tool of strategic offense. And on the horizon, you have the introduction of the naval version of India's indigenous Tejas fighter, and perhaps even twin, engine deck-based fighters. These next-gen aircraft will be lighter, faster, and better suited for naval combat. They'll bring in indigenous technology, tighter systems integration, and above all, homegrown dominance. So you see, it's not about having 100 weapons. It's about knowing how to use 10 with perfect timing. India's carrier group has mastered that rhythm. It doesn't just carry firepower, it manages it, with control, with insight, with an eye always watching, and a hand always steady. Because in the end, true power isn't reckless. It doesn't need to show off. It doesn't panic. It prepares, it positions, and when the time comes, it executes. There's a saying in the world of combat: a lone warrior may be fierce, but a team, tight, trained, and unified, is unstoppable. That's exactly the kind of energy India's carrier group brings to the seas. It doesn't move alone. It doesn't act alone. It doesn't survive alone. This isn't a one-man army. It's a well-coordinated pack, where each ship, each submarine, each aircraft knows its role and plays it with precision. That's the fourth reason why this group is so dangerous, not because of one vessel's strength, but because of how deadly they become together. At the center of this formation stands the aircraft carrier, whether INS Vikramaditya or INS Vikrant, majestic, towering, and teeming with air power. But no matter how mighty a carrier is, it's vulnerable without its escorts. That's where the real danger starts to grow. Surrounding the carrier are destroyers like the INS Kolkata and INS Chennai, heavily armed with long-range missiles, electronic warfare systems, and advanced radar arrays. These ships act like the frontline guardians, eyes wide open, always scanning, always ready. You try to approach that carrier without clearance, and these destroyers will be the first, and likely the last, thing you encounter. Now move in a little tighter. You've got guided missile frigates like the Shivali class, fast and versatile. They're not just tagalongs, they're multi-role predators. They handle air threats, surface threats, and even subsurface ones. Their role is dynamic. They adapt, react, and when needed, attack with full authority. And every action they take is part of a larger, silent choreography. Naval formation that moves like a single, breathing organism. Then, under the surface, lie the hidden protectors, the submarines. They don't make noise. They don't flash warning lights. They just exist, out of sight, always in range. These aren't just defensive assets. The nuclear-powered INS Arihant-class subs carry ballistic missiles, giving India its second strike capability. That's right, This carrier group isn't just equipped for conventional war. It carries the message of deterrence in the most chilling way. No matter what's launched against it, India can respond from beneath the sea, undetected, unchallenged. And the beauty of this pack mentality isn't just about muscle. It's about synergy. All these units are connected through secure naval data networks, satellite feeds, encrypted communications, and real-time threat detection systems. When a radar pings a hostile contact, the entire group knows it. When a submarine hears a torpedo splash, the carrier above adjusts course. It's seamless, it's constant, and it's ruthless in its efficiency. Even logistics play a role. Fleet support ships move with the group, keeping it refueled and resupplied without ever needing to dock. That's endurance, that's range, that's the ability to project power across oceans for weeks, even months, without losing combat capability. The carrier group becomes a storm that doesn't need to stop. A presence that doesn't fade with time. This isn't just strategy, it's survival, it's dominance by design. It's how a nation ensures that its most valuable asset at sea is never left vulnerable. Because in warfare, unpredictability can be an asset, but reliability, that's the foundation of real power. And when every ship in a carrier group performs with discipline, backed by cutting-edge tech, constant coordination, and mutual protection, what you have isn't just a naval formation. You have a moving, thinking, striking force that controls not just territory, but tempo, and that's what makes it dangerous. Not the fire it carries, but the unity it commands. In war, speed kills. And when speed is matched with precision, with planning, with intent, that's when you're no longer dealing with just a military unit. You're dealing with a weaponized idea. That's the reality of India's carrier group when you look at its missile systems, especially the BrahMos. Because what makes this carrier group truly dangerous isn't just that it can launch. It's how fast it can launch, how far it can reach, and how sure it is to hit its target. The BrahMos cruise missile is not just a tool of deterrence. It is the sharpest spear in India's naval arsenal. Co-developed with Russia, it travels at nearly 3 times the speed of sound, Mach 2, 8 to be exact. Now pause on that for a moment. Most cruise missiles fly low and slow to stay undetected. But the BrahMos doesn't tiptoe. It charges. It moves too fast for most modern air defense systems to even track properly, let alone shoot down. By the time you know it's coming, it's already too late. And when a missile moves that fast, it doesn't just damage targets. It ends them. And these aren't just land, strike missiles. These are CEAS, skimming multi-platform threats. They can be launched from warships, submarines, aircraft, and eventually even mobile coastal batteries. In the context of the carrier group, these missiles are deployed through vertical launch systems, aboard destroyers and frigates. The moment a threat is identified, a hostile vessel, a radar installation, a command center, BrahMos can be launched, and the target will be wiped out before it ever has a chance to respond. What adds to this lethality is the pairing of this strike capability with real-time data. Satellites, naval reconnaissance aircraft, and drones provide target coordinates with pinpoint accuracy. So you're not just firing into the fog, you're firing with your eyes open, locked on and certain. That's modern warfare, speed and certainty, and that's where India's carrier group is already playing in the big leagues, and it doesn't stop there. India is actively upgrading the BrahMos, longer range, faster speeds, smarter guidance. The hypersonic variant currently under development could travel at 5 times the speed of sound or more. Imagine a weapon so fast that even advanced radar systems barely get a warning. Imagine a carrier group with dozens of those ready to launch. That isn't just a naval advantage. That's a global shift in sea power dynamics. But missiles aren't the only part of the equation. Firepower also means air dominance. The MiG-29K fighters aboard India's carriers are armed with a mix of beyond visual range missiles, anti-ship weapons, and precision-guided bombs. These jets can reach, engage, and destroy targets while remaining protected by ship-based radar and electronic countermeasures. So now you've got a system where a threat can be engaged by a missile from a frigate, or from a destroyer, or from a fighter jet launched off the deck. There's no one path to victory, and no clear path for the enemy to defend. That flexibility, that multi-layered firepower, is what gives the carrier group its bite. The ability to strike from air, sea, or under the sea, to choose its weapon and its range and its response time. This isn't reactionary firepower. This is strategic, scalable, and smart. It's firepower that fits the mission, whether that mission is defense, deterrence, or dominance, because at the end of the day, firepower isn't about how many weapons you have. It's about how ready you are to use them, and how sure you are that once you do, they'll land exactly where you want, at exactly the right time. And that's the kind of certainty that turns a carrier group into a threat no one wants to provoke. There's a different kind of power that doesn't always make the headlines, but it's the one that decides the outcome long before the first shot is fired. It's not just about weapons or ships or numbers. It's about where you are and how long you can stay there. It's about presence, strategic presence, and that's one of the most dangerous traits of India's carrier group. The ability to maintain long-term control over vast stretches of the Indian Ocean region without ever needing to return to shore. Because when the flag flies from the deck of a carrier, it's not just signaling location. It's signaling authority. Think about the geography. The Indian Ocean isn't just any body of water. It's one of the most critical maritime corridors on Earth. Over 80% of the world's maritime oil trade passes through it. It connects East Africa, the Middle East, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. Whoever controls this region controls not just trade, but influence, diplomacy, and strategic leverage. And India, sitting at the center of it, doesn't just have the right. It has the responsibility to defend that space. The carrier group is the instrument that makes that possible. When INS Vikrant or Vikramaditya sets sail with its strike group, it's not bound by territorial limitations. It operates in open waters, thousands of kilometers from base, supported by replenishment ships and aerial supply chains. This endurance allows India to maintain a continuous naval footprint, from the Strait of Hormuz to the Strait of Malacca. That's not just a patrol route, that's a power move, and what makes it truly effective is that this presence is never passive. The carrier group doesn't just float, it conducts drills, it tests missile systems, it launches fighters, it communicates, it watches, it reminds everyone within range that India isn't sitting back, it's actively shaping the security environment of the region. And this constant, visible presence forces adversaries to account for India's response in every strategic calculation they make. That's deterrence. That's pressure without provocation. Now tie that presence to partnership. India's growing naval cooperation with nations like the U.S., France, Japan, and Australia, through frameworks like the Quad, means that the carrier group isn't just operating in isolation. It's part of a broader network of allies that are working together in exercises, information sharing, and maritime surveillance. This amplifies India's reach and multiplies its impact. When a carrier sails alongside ships from allied navies, it sends a unified message. This water is not unguarded, and instability will not be ignored. And none of this works without people. The sailors, the aviators, the engineers, and the officers who make it happen every single day. India's Navy is no longer a force that's building up. It's a force that's ready, trained to operate in blue waters with a deep understanding of not just tactics, but strategy. These are professionals who don't just respond to orders. They anticipate scenarios. They think, they adapt, and they act with discipline. That human element is what gives steel its sharpest edge. In today's world, where threats can come from cyber networks or hypersonic missiles, having a strong, constant, mobile presence isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. And India's carrier group answers that necessity with resolve. It carries not just weapons and aircraft, but the very idea that peace is protected by readiness, that balance is enforced by strength, and that when India takes to the seas, it doesn't just sail at lead.